from the top here is the summarize command, and showing you not only how to summarize, let's say we'll summarize by vendor in this case, and we'll accumulate the invoice amount. I mean, you could create a pivot table this way if you know, we have another webinar on that in a few weeks here, but you know, that's normally insert pivot table, but you could, you know, use active data to create the pivot table as well. But what I find is the statistic feature is fantastic, and just by selecting fields, I'm going to let it go crazy and do every one of these, but I will note to you, you probably don't need all of them. But what we'll do is I will finish that. And, you know, this will take a little bit of time. Okay, it was pretty quick. It was 5,000 rows, but very quickly there, it not only provided you by vendor the count of how many by vendor, but also the invoice total, the net value, the positive items, the negative items, the absolute value, the mean, the mode, and what I really like is the standard deviation. So, I mean, one of the things you could do from an audit standpoint, you know, very quickly here, is start to take the, let me just try to show you here, just say the mean of that data, and you could also take over here the, let's say, 3 standard deviations from that mean. So we'll just kind of take those. So, I mean, you could arguably, I'm just making this really small just so you could see it, but you could add together the mean and the standard deviation, find out what that value is, and then that value is something that then you could kind of look back by vendor, utilizing, say, a VLOOKUP, a little bit beyond what we're trying to do today, but you could use a VLOOKUP there. But what's really nice is now you have a VLOOKUP by vendor number and that new total column. So it's very simple to kind of add that calculated field here, do a VLOOKUP back to this original spreadsheet by vendor number, and then anytime that the invoice amount field exceeds that particular standard deviation plus the mean, you know, it's something where that is an anomaly and something that's far beyond what you would expect. But again, there's so much more in here, you know, there's all these statistical values that may be useful for you, and errors and total items and counts and etc. that hopefully you'll find quite useful as well. Okay, so you know, I guess going forward then into the active data commands, let me just go back to that invoices page sheet. You can also select the top and bottom items, and the top and bottom items is something where, let's just kind of show you by vendor number, invoice amount, let's say top 5. In this particular case, we'll hit the finish button here. Bear with me 1 second. So what's really cool about this is it gives you now by vendor number the top 5 items for each one, and again it's sorted high to low, and then the top 5. And you know, I mean, this, we're going to talk about stratified sampling in a minute, but this could be a way for you to kind of quickly figure out you know, the top and bottom items. And mind you, you know, when we look at the top and bottom items, you don't have to make it 5. I mean, you could make it 1. You know, so what is the top item for every vendor? Let me just hit the finish button here. It's going to create another sheet. So now this is the top item for every vendor listed out for you. You could then get the bottom item for every vendor and do a bit of let me just, I'll do that for you just so you could kind of see it here. Bear with me. We'll say the bottom item by vendor, first one. And it's a bit of a relative size factor. You know, what was the top amount that we posted to that vendor? What's the bottom amount to that vendor? And you know, again, it's something where pretty easily you could do, let's say, a compare sheet like we just did a second ago, or you could do a merge sheet, but the compare sheet would actually give you, let me just, may as well do this, it's quite easy to do that quickly. We'll do it by vendor number, we'll bring over that invoice amount field, and let's just bring that over for now and hit finish. And what that'll do is kind of give you that, what is the top and bottom of each one on one spreadsheet. So now you could kind of look at the variations between, you know, here I have one vendor with 124,000 as the top and 7,000 as the bottom. Don't know if that's unreasonable or not, but it is something, you know, it's kind of an interesting anomaly to go take a look into, versus something else where, you know, the top item is 1100 and the top item is 1200 and the bottom item is 1120. that's just not as interesting to go look at. It's a little more organized. Okay. I'm going to skip over the age and strata just for a second here because we're going to do stratified sampling in a second, which we'll spend some time on. And duplicates we'll do in a second as well. But just taking a look at gaps, and just back on the invoices paid, taking a look at the gaps. Actually, you know what? I had another example for gaps, so let me just bear with me 1 minute. Thought this was a little bit of, this is the general ledger data, and I just wanted to show you gaps on this one because I know it works out a little bit easier. We can do a gap on journal entry number, and we can start at 1, end at 267. What's kind of cool is that active data already tells you, where are the gaps. I can hit the preview button so I get an idea of that. And again, pretty neat. I'm expecting an increment of 1. I only wanted to show my missing items, and very, very quickly here it tells me you have a missing item at 27, 100, 113, 133, and 212. So we can hit the finish button, but it brought me back to the payable sheet. Here we go. So again, we can also hit the finish button, and it does bring you to a spreadsheet that only has the ones that are missing. And then you could go back to the general ledger and maybe sort it and look for 211, and then look for 213 and say, hey, where did where did 212 go? As we're going along here and running each one of these reports, and you'll notice this on any one of the active data spreadsheets, there is this comment that is added each time that you run a particular analysis. And in this case, we have the gaps being run on the general ledger sheet, and we ran it on the journal entry number, and we found 6 rows that, this ultimate number of rows that were missing were 6. So that we have 6 rows in this final spreadsheet. So it does give you a little bit of a log of what you've done. It's not a extensive log, but it does provide you with some idea of what you're looking at. So I did want to note that as well. Okay. I'm going to close this general ledger sheet just to kind of keep it simple. We'll continue with the accounts payable here. Okay, so another thing to take a look at is digital analysis, and that is Benford's Law, for those that don't know. And what we could take a look at is, say, taking a look at the invoice amount. I'm going to include the stratified analysis. I'm not going to group by for this particular one, but I'll do the first, second, first 2, last 2. Maybe we'll do the number duplication test as well. There's a lot of tests here that are potential. And without going into each one, because we did a whole course on Benford's Law, and I don't want to waste everyone's time today with this, but it is something where there is a lot here that you can do. And by hitting this finish button, bear with me 1 minute, very quickly you're given not only the stratification of all of your data, so that you can get an idea of, well, how many are less than 0, how many are 0 to 100, etc. Get a little graph of that. But just down here, bear with me, we can also see the digital analysis of the 1 to 9 for the second digit. Here is the first digit up here. So we have the first digit, the count, the proportion, what was Benford's Law expected to proportion, what's the difference, what's the Z statistic of that. I find the first digit, the second digit is kind of interesting. What I really like to look at is the Z statistic, and the first 2 digits and the Z statistic of that. So taking a look in this particular case, if we wanted to even filter this data rather quickly, we could kind of very quickly Z statistic and sort from smallest to largest, or largest to smallest, and look for the largest Z statistic and see which items were the furthest off. So here, if I could read this right, we had like 1.4% of 70 when we were expecting like 0.6%. So it's about 2 times or more of what was expected. And what is ending up happening is that's showing up as kind of the largest Z stat, and following onward down. Someone had asked the other day, what do I do now with this? Now that I know my 7 zeros are kind of weird, what do you do? You can hit 7 0 there on that digital analysis. For those that didn't see that quickly enough, you can hit that 7 0 and it automatically will bring you to the drill down of that 7 0. So everything that started with a 7 0 is brought to this particular spreadsheet. So it's a great way of kind of researching things that are very strange. And again, continuing onward, there's a lot more. I had the first 2-digit and graphs, and just make this a little bit smaller. The last 2 digits, and usually what happens here in the last 2 digits, as I probably go to this graph here, 50 tends to be a large item, and that exactly is what's happening here. Probably if I go over here, this is 75. Yep, 75. This one's probably 25. Sure enough, it is. So it is something where very quickly you can get what is kind of expected for digital analysis, and then what is also kind of coming up in your data, and you can drill down on anything from that. What I really like about it again is the speed of it doing all of this type of work very, very quickly. But again, that is digital analysis. From a sampling point of view, we are going to talk about stratifications, and actually, you know what? Let me just do statistics point of view. We'll click on invoice amount, and we can display statistics column-wise. We could even tag outliers here, which I am just realizing for the first time, so thanks, John, for putting that in there. So I can tag outliers and say, in that invoice amount, I want to identify items that are 3 standard deviations from the mean. I didn't even notice that in this new version. But again, this is a common feature to be able to run statistics in Excel. You can use the data analysis tool pack that comes with Excel, but this tagging of outliers that are, say, 3 standard deviations from the mean, that isn't something that Excel can do for you quickly. And like I said before, the tags are kind of over here, and something that you can kind of quickly look at. Just by going down, by scrolling down, you can tag items that are, let's say below the 3 standard deviations or above. And need to note this as well, which we haven't talked about yet. And I have to say, probably of all the features of active data, a lot of people still feel that this is one of the top active data commands that are out there, is being able to double click on a particular field, say the check number, and okay, I'm actually getting this confirmation, you sure you want to do this and all that good stuff. I'm just going to confirm, but it will sort it from high to low, and if I double click again, I'm going to confirm, it sorts it from low to high. So one way that you can do it is you can kind of sort on your tags, and then all the tagged items come to the top by just double clicking on a field. Again, I would say of all the commands, probably this is the one that everyone says to me, like, oh, I love the fact that I can double click on a column and it just automatically sorts it. I don't have to go to my data, filter, sort, or hit the sort button or what have you. It will automatically do it. But in this particular case, where we run statistics and we tagged items that were 3 standard deviations from the mean, I was trying to tell you before how to do that in a much harder way. That was easy, and it just automatically tagged all these items. What's kind of interesting is out of about 5,000 items, we only have about 42 that are showing up for that amount that are 3 standard deviations to the mean. So it's kind of an interesting little tool pack there. Okay, let me kind of jump into sampling, and then we will go back and we're going to talk later about stratification, duplicates, and I probably missed something else here, stratifications and duplicates and the merge sheets. So let me hit on sampling though. So okay, sampling, we have the ability to just do a random sample. I have to admit, most people I talk to will utilize this type of random sampling approach. You can calculate based on, and this is where sampling gets a little bit hairy for me, where I'm not going to be an expert and tell you that right now, but we are doing a course on this soon, where I am bringing in an expert to help me out on this one, where again you have your expected error rates, your tolerable error rates, your acceptance of what is the incorrect acceptance that you have, and by entering in this particular data, what you're able to do is to very quickly calculate your sample size. And upon calculating the sample size, I'm just going to put 30 in here just for now, but you can calculate this again depending on all the rule books that you're utilizing for your attribute sampling, and then hit the finish button. What that will do is pull a totally random 30 unit sample to a new sheet called sample of invoices paid. So that's kind of your quick way of doing that. Let me just go back to the sampling here. Now it calculated a random seed. I've proven to myself if you use the same random seed over and over again, it actually pulls the same samples. So you just have to be careful that you do want a random seed to be thrown in there. But that is a way to go back actually and get the same sample that you had before. And I'm pretty sure, although I have not checked it, that the random seed is actually posted in that comment. It has the word seed in front of it, and then that random seed is right there. So if you ever needed to go back and rerun the sample and actually get the same results, you just would have to make sure your data is sorted the same way, and then just do that type of sampling with that same random seed showing up in here. I think it was like 44825. That will provide you with a random sample that is the same. From a monetary unit sampling point of view, again, you can calculate this, but this is where there's even more information that you need to enter in here, that there's a whole course that is needed in sampling, I feel, in order to really go through all this. But a lot of the external auditors have this in their rule books. I will say, not to promote anyone, but I remember the PPC audit guide would have a worksheet that you would utilize, and that PPC audit guide would kind of walk you through what should your materiality be for this client, what's the expected misstatement, and by putting in all of these particular items and hitting the calculate button, it will give you an approximate sample size that you can then utilize. What monetary unit sampling does, instead of the sampling unit being each row of data in your data, it's actually the dollar amount, and it's going to count through these dollar amounts and identify items that it needs to pick. And the reason it's said back here, by the way, it's said like approximate sample size, is you can get into a situation where you pick an item twice because the interval, the dollar amount interval might be, let's say, 80,000. So it would end up going through this first item here and picking that second item, and then it would go through that second item and pick that probably this third item and continue on. But this 212 would probably get picked twice because it's so big. And in that case, then it would be something that it would kind of throw it out the second time around. So you might get a smaller sample size than what it kind of estimated based on the total dollar value that is in the system. You can also evaluate the samples. So again, monetary unit sample evaluation can be done at the end here, and that's where you can actually select the book value column, the audited value column, and get a final result. But I didn't want to spend too much time on it. I just wanted to note to everyone that not only can you do random monetary unit and monetary unit evaluation, but you can also do stratified sampling, which we're going to talk about in a second, as well. And I would find of all the techniques, I find the stratified samples probably the one that's used the most, and that's why I've kind of pulled it out, and we'll talk about that as kind of a separate type of item. So again, just kind of looking through all the commands. So far we have the summarize that'll calculate statistics by grouping, that if you'd like to do that, you don't have to. It can make pivot tables, you can do the top bottom items. We talked about gaps, we talked about how statistics could be run, and you can even tag items that are outside of the norm, if you will. All of this nice Benford law and sampling, which is a little more technical, but is something that is also within the product to utilize.